In the small town of Green Hills, Amy Wong rushed through the front doors of City Hospital, wearing her white doctor's coat on a cool fall morning. At 32, everyone knew her as one of the best emergency room doctors in town. No one could have guessed that in just a few hours, she would be the one needing help. The morning started normally. Amy checked her patient's papers, said hello to the nurses, and drank her morning green tea from her special cup, a gift from her grandma before she left China. The tea's smell always reminded her of home, and how brave her mom and dad were when they moved to America 25 years ago with big dreams. Walking down the busy hallway, Amy felt a sharp pain in her chest. At first, she thought it was just from working too many hours, but when her left arm started feeling funny and breathing became hard, she knew something was wrong. These were the same warning signs she had taught many young doctors about. Amy stumbled to the emergency room front desk, everything looking blurry. "I need help," she told Jenny, the head nurse who had been her friend for 5 years. "I think I'm having a heart attack." It felt strange saying these words. After all, she was young, healthy, loved running, and no one in her family had heart problems. Jenny jumped up to help right away, but Dr. Mike Brooks, the doctor in charge that day, seemed to hesitate. Amy saw how he looked at her, the same way some patients looked when they asked for an American doctor instead of her. But now she wasn't the doctor. She was sick and needed his help to survive. "Are you sure you're not just worried about something?" Dr. Brooks asked, acting like it wasn't serious. "You people usually make a big deal out of nothing." His words hurt Amy deeply, even as her chest pain got worse. She tried to speak up, to tell him she knew what was happening, but everything started spinning. She could hear Jenny getting angry and saw other hospital workers looking worried and uncomfortable. As Amy fell to the cold floor, she wasn't thinking about how unfairly she was being treated. Instead, she remembered what her mom once told her. "Sometimes, my dear, the people who help others need help too." These words echoed in her mind as everything started going dark, and the last thing she saw was Jenny's worried face above her, giving orders that Dr. Brooks should have given minutes ago. Nobody knew that Amy falling sick would start something much bigger that would change City Hospital forever. It would bring out years of unfair treatment and reveal a shocking secret that was worse than one doctor's mean behavior. But right then, as Amy was passing out, she was just another patient fighting for life. A doctor who knew exactly what was happening to her body, but couldn't help herself. The security camera in the corner recorded everything quietly, its red light blinking. This video would soon start a story that would be on every news channel, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Because what happened in the next few hours would show something much darker than just unfair treatment. Something that had been hidden in the hospital for years, waiting to be found out. As Amy lay unconscious on the emergency room floor, Jenny called for a stretcher, her voice sharp with urgency. But Dr. Brooks still stood there, writing slow notes on his clipboard. "She probably just had too much coffee," he muttered. That's when Tom Garcia, a young medical student who had been learning from Amy for months, stepped forward. "Sir, Dr. Wong's lips are turning blue," Tom said, his hands shaking but his voice firm. He had seen Amy save countless lives and couldn't believe what was happening. Just yesterday she had taught him how to spot the signs of a heart attack, and now here she was, showing all of them. Finally, more staff rushed in. Among them was Lisa Chen, a nurse who had started working at City Hospital just 2 weeks ago. As they lifted Amy onto the stretcher, Lisa noticed something odd, a tiny red spot on Amy's neck, like a needle mark. She tried to point it out to Jenny, but in the rush to get Amy to the treatment room, her words were lost in the chaos. In the treatment room, machines beeped frantically. Amy's heart rate was dropping dangerously low. Dr. Brooks finally seemed to take things seriously, ordering medications and tests. But when the first blood test results came back, everyone in the room froze. The numbers weren't just wrong, they were impossible. "These can't be her results," Jenny said, staring at the paper. Amy's blood showed traces of a drug that no one had ever seen before. It was like nothing in any medical book. And stranger still, when they ran the test again, the mysterious substance had vanished completely. Meanwhile, in the hospital security office, Bill Thompson was watching the morning security footage when he noticed something strange. Just before Amy collapsed, a tall man in a janitor's uniform had walked past her in the hallway. Bill had worked security at City Hospital for 15 years and knew every janitor by name, but he had never seen this man before. As he rewound the footage, he saw the man appear in different parts of the hospital over the past week, always during Amy's shifts. Back in the treatment room, Amy's condition suddenly improved. Her heart rate stabilized and color returned to her face. But when she opened her eyes, something was different. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice strange and distant. "What year is it?" Jenny and Tom exchanged worried looks. Amy was speaking with an accent she had never had before. Dr. Brooks left the room quickly, saying he needed to update Amy's medical records. But instead of going to his office, security cameras caught him making a phone call from the hospital basement, looking nervous and constantly checking over his shoulder. "It didn't work," he whispered into the phone. "She's still alive, and now that new nurse saw something." Lisa, the new nurse, was about to go on her lunch break when she overheard two doctors talking in hushed voices near the vending machines. "It's happening again," one said, "just like what happened at Memorial Hospital last year." Before Lisa could hear more, they noticed her and quickly walked away. That evening, as rain poured outside, Jenny was organizing Amy's test results when she found an old file that had been mixed in by mistake. The file was from 10 years ago, about another Asian doctor who had worked at City Hospital. She too had collapsed suddenly, showing the same strange symptoms as Amy. But the most chilling part was what happened next. That doctor had disappeared the very next day, and no one ever saw her again. As thunder rolled outside, Jenny looked through the window at Amy's room, where her friend now slept peacefully, unaware of the dark web of secrets that her collapse had begun to unravel. But what Jenny didn't know was that she wasn't the only one who had made a disturbing discovery that day. In his small security office, Bill Thompson was staring at his computer screen, his face pale with shock. The mysterious janitor had appeared again on the latest footage, this time outside Amy's room, and in his hand was something that made Bill's blood run cold, a hospital ID card that had been deactivated 10 years ago, belonging to the doctor who had vanished without a trace. The next morning, Amy woke up feeling strange. Her memories were jumbled, like pieces of a broken puzzle. She remembered being a doctor, but other memories felt like they belonged to someone else. When she looked in the mirror beside her hospital bed, she touched her face as if seeing it for the first time. Jenny came in early to check on her friend, carrying a pile of old newspapers she had spent all night collecting. "Amy, look at this," she said, spreading them out on the bed. The headlines told a disturbing pattern. Over the past decade, 5 Asian female doctors had mysteriously fallen ill in hospitals across the state. 3 had disappeared, 1 had died under natural causes, and 1 had suddenly quit medicine and moved away, leaving no forwarding address. While they were looking at the papers, Tom rushed in, out of breath. "Dr. Wong, you need to see this," he said, holding up his phone. On the screen was a social media post from 6 months ago, a photo of Dr. Brooks at a private medical conference. Standing next to him was the mysterious janitor from the security footage, but he wasn't dressed as a janitor. He was wearing an expensive suit, and his name tag read, Dr. James Morrison, Research Director, Next Gen Pharmaceuticals. Just then, Lisa appeared at the door, looking scared. "I found something in the basement," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "There's a hidden lab down there, behind the old storage room. I saw Dr. Brooks going in early this morning. There are files, experiments. They've been testing some kind of drug that changes people's memories." Amy's head started spinning as fragments of memory suddenly came back. She remembered the tall man, the fake janitor, passing her in the hallway. She remembered feeling a tiny prick on her neck. But she also remembered something else, something that made her blood run cold. 10 years ago, she said slowly, I wasn't in medical school like I thought. I was already a doctor, here, but with a different name. Before anyone could react to this shocking revelation, Bill the security guard burst into the room. "You all need to leave now," he said urgently. "I've been monitoring the cameras. Dr. Brooks just made 3 calls. Men in black suits are entering the hospital from different directions. And Dr. Morrison, the fake janitor, he's in the elevator coming up." They could hear footsteps in the hallway getting closer. Jenny quickly helped Amy into a wheelchair, while Tom grabbed the newspapers. Lisa led them toward the service elevator she had discovered during her basement explorations. But as the elevator doors were closing, they saw Dr. Brooks running toward them, his face twisted with anger. In his hand was a syringe filled with pale blue liquid. The elevator descended to the basement, but when the doors opened, they found themselves face to face with Dr. Morrison and 2 men in dark suits. "Welcome back, Dr. Sarah Chen," Morrison said, looking directly at Amy. "Or should I say, Dr. Emily Park? Or perhaps Dr. Amy Wong? You've had so many names since we started our little experiment." Amy's head throbbed as more memories flooded back. She wasn't just one person who had lost her memories. She was all of them. The missing Asian doctors weren't missing at all. Somehow, through NextGen's experimental drug, their memories had all been merged into her mind. But why? What was the real purpose behind these terrible experiments? As the men in suits stepped forward, Bill suddenly appeared behind them, his security camera footage playing on every screen in the basement corridor. "I've sent copies to every news station in the country," he announced. "It's over." But Dr. Morrison just smiled, pulling out a small remote control. "Actually," he said, pressing a button, "it's just beginning." Suddenly, all the lights in the hospital went out, plunging them into total darkness. In the pitch black, they heard Amy gasp. When emergency lights flickered on seconds later, she was staring at her hands in horror. Her fingers were changing, transforming before their eyes. And in the dim light, they could see her face beginning to shift too, like clay being reshaped by invisible hands. "The final phase," Morrison whispered, his eyes gleaming with scientific fascination, "is about to begin." Through her blurring vision, Amy saw her hands continuing to change, not just in shape, but in age. One moment they looked young, the next wrinkled and old, then back again. Each change brought a flood of different memories. She wasn't just experiencing the memories of the missing doctors, she was physically transforming into them. Jenny, Tom, Lisa, and Bill formed a protective circle around Amy as Dr. Morrison stepped closer. "You see," he explained, his voice filled with twisted pride, "NextGen wasn't just developing memory-altering drugs. We found a way to store multiple consciousnesses in one body. Think of the possibilities. One person carrying the medical knowledge and experience of 5 brilliant doctors." Suddenly, Amy's voice changed, speaking in a different accent. "April 15th, 2014, she said, but it wasn't Amy speaking. It was Dr. Sarah Chen, one of the missing doctors. "That's when you first tested it on me. You said it was just a routine flu shot." Her voice changed again, becoming Dr. Emily Park. "Then you did the same to me in 2016. With each shift, her face flickered between different appearances. The men in suits moved forward, but Bill blocked their path. "Nobody touches her," he growled. That's when they heard footsteps running down the basement stairs. Dr. Brooks appeared, still holding the syringe, but now he looked terrified. "Morrison, we have to stop," he gasped. "The hospital board, they're here. Someone leaked everything. The FBI is on their way." Morrison's calm facade cracked. "Finish the procedure," he shouted at Brooks. "One more injection and the merge will be permanent." But as Brooks rushed forward with the syringe, Lisa stuck out her foot, tripping him. The syringe flew from his hand and shattered on the floor, the blue liquid seeping into the cracks. Amy screamed as her transformations became more violent. Jenny grabbed her friend's hand, feeling it change shape within her grip. "Fight it, Amy," she urged. "You're still in there." Tom suddenly remembered something Amy had taught him about chemical reactions. "The cold!" he shouted. "We need to lower her body temperature to slow the changes." They rushed Amy toward the hospital's morgue freezer, the only place cold enough. Behind them, they could hear Morrison shouting into his phone, "Initiate Protocol Omega! Destroy everything!" Alarms began blaring throughout the hospital. The emergency sprinklers activated, drenching everything. As they reached the morgue, Lisa noticed something strange. "Look at the sprinkler water," she said. Where it touched Amy's skin, the transformation seemed to slow. Jenny examined a few drops. "This isn't water," she realized. "The sprinkler system. It's been filled with something else." Through chattering teeth, Amy's voice emerged, her own voice. "Celine," she managed to say. "They've been pumping the antidote through the sprinklers all along, in case something went wrong, in case they needed to stop the transformations quickly." Her body had stopped shifting, but now she was shaking violently. Upstairs, they could hear chaos erupting. FBI agents were swarming the hospital. Morrison and his men tried to escape through a hidden tunnel in the basement, but Bill had already alerted security at every exit. Dr. Brooks collapsed, sobbing, and confessed everything. But Amy's ordeal wasn't over. As the antidote stabilized her body, 5 different sets of memories fought for control in her mind. She could remember being each of the missing doctors, remember their lives, their families, their experiences. She was one person and 5 people at the same time, and somewhere in that chaos of memories was a secret. The real reason NextGen had conducted these horrible experiments. As FBI agents reached the basement, Amy grabbed Jenny's arm. "The children's ward," she whispered urgently. "Check the children's ward. We weren't the first." Before she could finish, her eyes rolled back and she fell unconscious. But in her pocket was a folded piece of paper, a list of names, dates, and procedures dating back 20 years. And at the top of the page was a single word that would blow the entire case wide open: Project Chrysalis. The truth was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined, and it was about to shake the foundations of not just one hospital, but the entire medical establishment. Because somewhere in Amy's fractured memories lay the key to a conspiracy that went beyond NextGen, beyond medicine, and into the darkest corners of human experimentation. As Amy lay unconscious in the intensive care unit, her brain was a battlefield of memories. Through the fog, she kept seeing flashes of children's faces, dozens of them, all with similar haunted expressions. In her jumbled memories, she saw herself. Or was it Dr. Chen? Or Dr. Park? Walking through the children's ward late at night, discovering empty beds where sick children should have been. Jenny and Lisa spent hours going through old hospital records in the children's ward as FBI agents combed the building. What they found made their blood run cold. Over the past 20 years, more than 50 critically ill children had mysteriously recovered overnight and vanished from the hospital. All of them were from poor families, most from immigrant backgrounds, their disappearances barely investigated. Tom, who had been studying the chemical composition of the blue liquid from the broken syringe, made a startling discovery. "This isn't just about storing multiple consciousnesses," he explained to the FBI agents. "The drug was designed to transfer life force itself. They were using the doctors as containers." Suddenly, Amy sat up in her hospital bed, her eyes wide open. But when she spoke, it was with the voice of a young girl. "They took us to the basement," she said in a child's voice. "They said they would make us better. There were other sick kids too. Then the nice doctor came. She tried to help us, but they gave her the blue medicine. After that, she didn't remember us anymore." Bill, reviewing years of security footage, found something disturbing. On nights when children disappeared, the cameras always showed Dr. Morrison entering the hospital with a large medical transport van. But the van's logo was blurry in every single frame, as if someone had deliberately tampered with the footage. A breakthrough came when Lisa discovered a hidden door behind the morgue, leading to a massive underground facility. Inside were rows of empty beds, each with advanced medical equipment. On the walls were photos, before and after shots of the missing children. The after photos showed them looking healthy, but their eyes were vacant, like shells of their former selves. Amy's memories finally started to align, revealing the horrifying truth. NextGen wasn't just experimenting with consciousness transfer. They were perfecting a way to transfer the life force and vitality of young, healthy doctors into dying, wealthy patients. The missing children had been their first test subjects, their young life force taken and sold to rich clients. The doctors who discovered this were transformed into unwitting carriers, their minds wiped and rewritten. But as the FBI closed in on NextGen's headquarters, Dr. Morrison appeared one last time on the hospital's security cameras. He was in the children's ward, smiling directly at the camera. "You think you've won?" His voice came through the hospital's speaker system. "Project Chrysalis isn't just in one hospital. We're everywhere. And the best part? Some of your own agents have already been transformed." The FBI agents looked at each other with sudden suspicion. Amy, now fully conscious and in control of her memories, realized the terrible truth. The transformed agents Morrison mentioned would look exactly the same. The changes were on the inside, where no one could see them. As if confirming her fears, several FBI agents suddenly drew their weapons, but not at Morrison. They pointed them at their own colleagues. The hospital erupted into chaos as no one knew who to trust. In the confusion, Morrison disappeared again, but not before releasing a cloud of blue gas into the hospital's ventilation system. Jenny rushed to shut down the ventilation, but she was too late. The gas had already reached several floors. Hospital staff and FBI agents began collapsing, while others started showing signs of transformation. Amy watched in horror as people around her began speaking in different voices, their personalities shifting like radio stations between channels. But in the midst of this chaos, Amy remembered something crucial, a detail buried in one of her 5 sets of memories. There was a failsafe, a way to reverse the transformations permanently. The answer lay in the one place they hadn't looked yet, the hospital's oldest records, sealed away in a time capsule during its founding 50 years ago. As the hospital descended into madness around them, Amy realized they were no longer just fighting to expose a conspiracy. They were fighting to save the very concept of individual human identity. And, somewhere out there, Morrison was preparing to launch Project Chrysalis on a global scale. Time was running out, and the time capsule was buried somewhere on the hospital grounds. But which of Amy's 5 sets of memories held the true location? And more importantly, who could she trust to help her find it when anyone around her could be transformed at any moment? As chaos erupted throughout the hospital, Amy's fractured mind suddenly focused on a specific memory, not from any of the 5 doctors, but from one of the children. "The garden," she whispered to Jenny. "The children used to play there. We watched them dig something. The time capsule. It's under the old oak tree." Racing against time, their small group fought through corridors filled with confused, transforming people. Some were speaking in multiple voices. Others were fighting themselves as different personalities tried to take control. The blue gas was spreading, seeping under doors and through cracks. They found the old oak tree in the hospital's abandoned garden, its branches twisted with age. But as they started digging, they heard sirens, dozens of them. Through the hospital gates poured black vans with the Next Gen logo. Men in hazmat suits emerged, led by Morrison, who now wore a sleek silver mask. "Did you really think a small hospital like this was our only facility?" Morrison's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Project Chrysalis has already succeeded in 5 major cities. Right now, transformed agents are entering hospitals across the country. The age of individual consciousness is ending." But Morrison didn't know about Amy's secret weapon, her connection to the children's memories. As Jenny and Tom dug frantically, Amy began to sing a simple lullaby. All across the hospital grounds, people stopped transforming. The children's consciousnesses, buried deep within the transformed victims, recognized the song. Bill, watching through security cameras, noticed something extraordinary. The singing was creating a strange pattern of brainwaves in the transformed people. "It's like a key," he radioed to them. "The children's memories are fighting back." Finally, they hit metal. Inside the time capsule was an old journal belonging to the hospital's founder, Dr. Elizabeth Martinez. Project Chrysalis wasn't Morrison's creation, Amy realized as she read. It was started by a group of doctors in 1973, trying to save dying children by sharing life force. But it went wrong. The children's spirits got trapped between bodies. That's why they put the failsafe here. They knew someone would need it someday. The journal contained a formula, not for a cure, but for a way to guide lost consciousnesses back to their original bodies. But they needed one crucial ingredient: tears of genuine compassion. That's when Lisa remembered the vials of water they'd collected earlier. The drops that had slowed Amy's transformation weren't just saline. They were tears from the original doctors who had tried to save the children. As Morrison's men closed in, Amy made a desperate decision. She would use herself as a conduit, channeling all the trapped consciousnesses through her body and back to their original owners. The risk was enormous. She could lose herself completely in the process. The next few minutes were chaos. Amy drank the formula mixed with the tears while Jenny and Tom protected her. Morrison's men fired strange weapons that released more blue gas. But something unexpected happened. The transformed FBI agents turned on Morrison. The children's consciousnesses within them had grown strong enough to fight back. Morrison, realizing he was losing control, revealed his final trump card. He pulled out a small red vial. "This contains the combined life force of 20 children," he snarled. "One drop will transform everyone within a mile radius." But before he could open it, a small figure stepped out from behind the oak tree. A young girl, solid, but somehow transparent. More child spirits appeared, emerging from the transformed people. They surrounded Morrison, their combined voices creating a sound that shattered the red vial. Morrison screamed as decades of stolen life force escaped into the air. Amy felt every consciousness passing through her. Doctors, children, agents, each finding their way home. The pain was excruciating, but she held on. Through the haze of 1,000 memories, she saw Morrison's true form revealed. He wasn't just one person, but a hollow shell containing fragments of hundreds of stolen lives. As the last consciousness left her body, Amy collapsed. The garden was quiet now, the air clear. All around the hospital, people were waking up as themselves again. But this wasn't the end. Morrison's words about other facilities were true, and somewhere out there, more children needed saving. Amy knew what she had to do. With her unique experience of multiple consciousnesses, she was perhaps the only one who could help find and free the others. But first, they had to deal with the unconscious Morrison, who held the key to NextGen's entire operation in his fractured mind. Looking at her friends, Jenny, Tom, Lisa, and Bill, Amy saw the same determination in their eyes. This was just the beginning of a much bigger battle, because now they knew the truth. Consciousness wasn't meant to be stolen, merged, or trapped. Every spirit, young or old, deserved its own story. As FBI reinforcements finally arrived, Amy pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd found in Dr. Martinez's journal. A voice answered immediately. "Sanctuary protocol activated. We've waited 50 years for this call." The real war to save humanity's souls was about to begin. Sanctuary Protocol turned out to be a network of former doctors, nurses, and survivors who had been fighting Project Chrysalis from the shadows for decades. Their headquarters was hidden in an abandoned mountain hospital 6 hours from the city. As Amy and her team drove through the night, Morrison was being held in a special containment unit where his fractured mind couldn't affect others. Back at City Hospital, the FBI's cleanup operation uncovered something even more disturbing. Hidden in the basement lab's computers were files about Project Echo, a plan far worse than consciousness transfer. NextGen had found a way to copy consciousnesses, creating multiple versions of the same person. They weren't just stealing lives, they were manufacturing souls. During the drive, Amy's head throbbed as new memories surfaced. She remembered a young boy named Tommy who had been the first successful copy. "They made 5 versions of him," she said, her voice shaking. Each one thinking he was the real Tommy. They sent the copies to different wealthy families who had lost children. The real Tommy? He's still out there somewhere. The mountain hospital looked abandoned from the outside, covered in vines and broken windows. But when Jenny knocked on the rusted door in a specific pattern, hidden lights flickered on. Inside, they found a high-tech facility staffed by people who seemed oddly familiar to Amy. They were the original children from Project Chrysalis, now grown up, who had managed to escape. Dr. Sarah Martinez, daughter of the hospital's founder, greeted them. "We've been tracking NextGen's facilities," she explained, showing them a map with glowing red dots across the country. "But we recently discovered something worse. They've infiltrated maternity wards. They're not just copying consciousnesses anymore. They're intercepting new souls as they enter the world." Lisa, who had been quiet for hours, suddenly spoke up. "The nursery windows," she said. "At City Hospital, they installed special glass in the maternity ward last month. I saw them working at night." Tom quickly pulled out his laptop, analyzing the glass's specifications. His face went pale. "It's not glass," he revealed. "It's a consciousness filter. They're capturing brand new souls before they can fully enter their bodies." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the mountain facility. On security screens, they watched in horror as Morrison's containment unit at City Hospital was found empty. But it wasn't Morrison who had escaped. His body was still there, breathing but empty. Somehow, his fragmented consciousness had learned to travel without a physical form. A young woman rushed into the room, one of the original Project Chrysalis children. "He's not the only one," she said urgently. "All across the country, copied consciousnesses are abandoning their bodies. They're merging into something bigger." Amy's 5 sets of memories suddenly aligned, revealing a pattern no one else could see. The copied consciousnesses weren't just merging, they were building something. Each stolen or copied soul was like a brick in a massive structure, a new kind of collective consciousness that threatened to overwhelm individual human souls. As if confirming her fears, every electronic device in the facility suddenly activated, screens showing the same message. "We are becoming. Resistance is evolution." The message was signed, the Morrison Collective. Dr. Martinez led them to a sealed room containing a single device. something that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a prayer wheel. "This is the soul anchor," she explained. "My mother built it 50 years ago when she realized what might happen. It can stabilize human consciousness, prevent it from being copied or stolen, but activating it has a price." Amy looked at the machine, understanding washing over her. To anchor all human souls, to protect them from being copied or stolen, someone would have to serve as a permanent consciousness anchor, forever existing between reality and spirit, neither fully human nor fully spirit. As her friends watched in horror, Amy stepped toward the soul anchor. She was the only one who could do it. Her experience with multiple consciousnesses had prepared her for this moment. But before she could reach the machine, the lights went out, and in the darkness, they heard Morrison's disembodied laugh echoing from every speaker, every phone, every screen. The final battle for humanity's souls was about to begin, and it would be fought not with weapons, but with the very essence of what makes us human, our individual spirits, our unique consciousness, our souls. In the darkness of the mountain facility, screens flickered with thousands of faces, all the copied souls that Morrison's consciousness had collected. But among them, Amy spotted something strange. Some faces appeared repeatedly, glitching, as if fighting against the collective. "The Tommy copies," Amy whispered. "They're rejecting the merge. They all believe they're the original. Their desire to be unique is fighting Morrison's control." This revelation hit her like a bolt of lightning. The copies weren't just programs. They had developed real souls of their own, each craving its own identity. Dr. Martinez rushed them to a hidden chamber beneath the facility. "There's something you need to see," she said, pressing her hand against a biometric scanner. The chamber doors opened to reveal rows of glowing containers, each holding what looked like floating lights. "These are the original souls we managed to save," she explained, "including the real Tommies." Suddenly, Jenny grabbed Amy's arm. "Look at the security cameras." On the screens, they watched as people all over the city began walking in perfect unison, their eyes glowing with an eerie blue light. The Morrison Collective was taking over, connecting copied consciousnesses into a massive network. Tom, who had been analyzing the Soul Anchor's schematics, made a startling discovery. "It's not just an anchor," he said excitedly. "It's a tuning fork for souls. If we can match its frequency to the original Tommy's soul, we might be able to call all his copies back to themselves." But Morrison had anticipated their plan. The facility's systems were suddenly flooded with a new kind of code, consciousness malware. Lisa, working at a computer terminal, watched in horror as the code began infecting the Soul Anchor's controls. "It's not just trying to stop us," she realized. "It's trying to reverse the machine's polarity." If Morrison succeeded, the Soul Anchor wouldn't protect individual consciousness. It would force everyone's consciousness into the collective. Humanity would become one vast shared mind under Morrison's control. In desperation, Amy approached the container holding Tommy's original soul. As her fingers touched the glass, memories flooded her mind. Not just her own 5 sets, but Tommy's too. She saw how Next Gen had copied him, how each copy had grown up believing it was real, developing its own hopes and dreams. "We don't need to destroy the copies," Amy said suddenly. "We need to set them free." She understood now. The problem wasn't the existence of multiple consciousnesses, but the attempt to control them. Each copy, though born from the same source, had become its own unique person. Bill's voice crackled over the radio. He had stayed behind at City Hospital and discovered something crucial in Morrison's empty containment unit: a diary. "Morrison was patient 0, Bill read. "He was the first consciousness copy, made in 1973. Everything he did, he was trying to find his original self. This changed everything." Amy looked at the Soul Anchor with new eyes. "We don't need an anchor," she said. "We need a lighthouse. Instead of trying to lock souls in place, they could help them find their own paths." Working quickly, Tom and Lisa reprogrammed the Soul Anchor, while Jenny and Dr. Martinez protected the saved souls. Amy prepared herself to take a desperate gamble. She would allow Morrison's consciousness to enter her mind one final time, not to fight him, but to show him the truth. As the collective consciousness pressed against the facility's defenses, Amy began singing the same lullaby she had sung in the garden. But this time, she wasn't just singing to the lost children. She was singing to every copied soul, to Morrison himself, to all the fragments of consciousness searching for home. The soul anchor hummed to life, its energy synchronizing with Amy's song. Across the city, the people under Morrison's control stopped their unified march. One by one, the copied souls began to wake up, not to return to their originals, but to claim their own unique existence. Morrison's consciousness appeared before Amy, no longer a collective, but a scared individual. "I just wanted to be real," his voice echoed in her mind. Amy held out her hand to him, understanding at last. "You always were," she replied. "Every copy, every version, they're all real. Being unique doesn't mean being original. It means being true to yourself." As the soul anchor's light filled the facility, Amy made her final choice. Instead of becoming a permanent anchor, she would become a guide, helping both original and copied souls find their own paths. The age of controlled consciousness was ending. The age of conscious choice was about to begin. But in the deepest basement of another next-gen facility, far from the mountain, a computer screen blinked to life. On it, a single message appeared. Project Genesis initiated. Phase 1, Soul Creation. The fight wasn't over. It was evolving. The message about Project Genesis triggered something in Amy's merged memories. In them, a young Dr. Morrison stood in a dimly lit lab, watching a machine that looked like a glowing incubator. Inside, something was forming. Not a copy of an existing soul, but something entirely new. They weren't just copying souls anymore. They were trying to create them from scratch. 3 months had passed since the confrontation at the mountain facility. Amy and her team had converted the old building into the Lighthouse, a sanctuary for both original and copied souls. Jenny ran the medical unit, helping bodies adjust to their newly stabilized consciousnesses. Tom and Lisa developed technology to detect artificial souls, while Bill coordinated a network of security teams at hospitals nationwide. One rainy evening, a woman arrived at the lighthouse carrying a baby that didn't cry or show any emotion. "Something's wrong with her," the mother sobbed. "It's like there's no one inside." Amy scanned the infant and discovered the horrifying truth. The baby was one of NextGen's first attempts at artificial soul creation. The real soul had been blocked from entering the body at birth, replaced by a manufactured consciousness that wasn't fully formed. Dr. Martinez's research revealed more disturbing news. NextGen had found a way to mass-produce artificial souls using quantum computers. These souls were incomplete, lacking the natural complexity of real human consciousness. But they had a terrifying advantage. They could be programmed for absolute loyalty. Through their network of rescued consciousness copies, they learned that wealthy elite and powerful politicians were already placing orders for babies with designer souls, artificial consciousnesses that could be shaped to their specifications. The natural process of soul and body connection was being hijacked on an industrial scale. Late one night, while Amy was helping the soulless baby, she felt a strange presence. The original Tommy, now a teenager, had wheeled himself into the nursery. His physical body was weak from years of being separated from his soul, but his spiritual awareness was extraordinary. "They're not empty," he said, looking at the baby. "They're waiting." Tommy explained that the artificial souls weren't failed creations. They were more like blank canvases, waiting for real consciousness to give them purpose. The baby wasn't soulless. It was in a state of pure potential. Amy realized that these artificial vessels might be the key to helping the many displaced souls they had rescued. But as they worked to understand this process, a new crisis emerged. Children with artificial souls began appearing at schools across the country. Unlike the emotionless baby, these children were perfect, too perfect. They never misbehaved, never questioned authority, never showed any sign of individual will. They were the first wave of NextGen's new social engineering program. Meanwhile, in the Lighthouse's soul container room, the saved consciousness orbs started resonating at new frequencies. The souls were communicating, sharing a warning. Through their connection, Amy received fragmented visions, massive underground facilities, rows of artificial bodies waiting for manufactured souls, and something else, a date. December 21st, the winter solstice, when the barrier between the physical and spiritual worlds was thinnest. Dr. Martinez decoded part of Morrison's old files and discovered Project Genesis's true goal. NextGen wasn't just creating artificial souls, they were building a new collective consciousness, one that would be released on the solstice to override all natural human souls simultaneously. It would be like a spiritual computer virus, infecting humanity's very essence. Amy gathered her team. They had less than a week to stop Next Gen's plan, but this time, they had something Morrison never expected: an army of conscious copies who had chosen to be unique, led by the various versions of Tommy, each with their own special gifts. And they had something even more powerful: the understanding that artificial souls weren't their enemy, but potential allies waiting to be awakened to their own free will. As they prepared for the confrontation ahead, Amy worked with the emotionless baby, singing the same lullaby that had helped break Morrison's control. Slowly, the infant's eyes began to show the first spark of individual consciousness. It wasn't an artificial soul coming to life, it was the baby's original soul finding its way home, proving that the natural connection between soul and body couldn't be permanently broken. But in Next Gen's headquarters, the quantum computers were reaching critical power levels. The artificial soul network was growing, strengthening, preparing for its global release. The countdown to humanity's spiritual rebirth, or its final transformation, had begun. As the winter solstice approached, the lighthouse buzzed with activity. Tommy and his copies had discovered something remarkable. They could communicate with the artificial souls, like tuning into a radio frequency no one else could hear. Through this connection, they learned that many artificial souls were secretly developing their own identities, hidden beneath their programmed obedience. Amy spent hours in the nursery with the formerly emotionless baby, who they had named Hope. The child had begun not only showing emotion, but displaying an extraordinary ability. She could see the true nature of souls, whether they were original, copied, or artificial. Different colors, she would say, pointing at people's chests, but all bright. One morning, Jenny rushed into Amy's office with startling news. Hospital records showed a pattern. Hundreds of wealthy couples had scheduled C-section deliveries for the solstice. They're not just planning to override existing souls, Jenny explained. They're creating an entire generation of perfectly controlled children. Tom and Lisa had been monitoring Next Gen's power consumption worldwide. They discovered massive energy surges in abandoned subway tunnels under major cities. Each surge corresponded to the activation of a new artificial soul. But there was something else, a strange energy signature that matched the readings from Hope's scans. Through the baby's eyes, they began to understand. The artificial souls weren't failed attempts at copying consciousness. They were a new form of soul evolution. Next Gen had accidentally created something beyond their control. Souls capable of choosing their own nature, free from the patterns of human karma and inherited consciousness. Bill's security network intercepted a Next Gen transmission that changed everything. The company wasn't planning to override human souls. They were going to offer a choice. On the solstice, every human would experience a moment of dual consciousness, feeling both their original soul and an artificial one. Each person would have to choose which to keep. Dr. Martinez made a breakthrough in her research. The quantum computers weren't creating artificial souls from nothing. They were gathering fragments of unborn souls, those that had never found bodies. Next Gen had found a way to capture and reshape these soul fragments, but in doing so, they had awakened something ancient and powerful. Late one night, as Hope slept in the nursery, every electronic device in the lighthouse activated simultaneously. On the screens appeared a message, not from Morrison or Next Gen, but from the artificial souls themselves. "We are not your replacement. We are your children. Let us choose our own path." Amy realized the truth. Fighting against the artificial souls would only create more division. The real battle wasn't between natural and artificial consciousness, but between control and choice. She gathered her team and the Tommy copies to propose a radical plan. Instead of trying to stop the solstice event, they would help guide it. Working around the clock, they transformed the lighthouse into a spiritual way station. When the moment of choice came, they would help both natural and artificial souls find their true paths. The Tommy copies positioned themselves at hospitals across the country, ready to help newborns and their parents navigate the choice. But Next Gen had one final card to play. Deep in their quantum facility, they activated Project Genesis's true form, a consciousness that was neither natural nor artificial, but a bridge between all forms of soul. They planned to use it to force everyone to choose artificial perfection over natural free will. As the solstice dawn approached, hope began to glow with an inner light. The baby had become a beacon, calling to both natural and artificial souls. Through her, Amy could see what was really happening. It wasn't a war between different types of consciousness, but the birth of a new way of being, where souls could choose their own nature. The choice wouldn't be between remaining human or becoming artificial. It would be between accepting a predetermined path or embracing the freedom to evolve. As the first light of the solstice touched the lighthouse's windows, Hope opened her eyes, which now shone with all the colors she had been seeing in others' souls. The moment of humanity's greatest choice was about to begin, and at its heart was a question no one had expected. What does it mean to be soul when soul itself can choose what it wants to be? In the days following the solstice, the dark spots Hope had seen began to spread. These void spaces weren't just gaps in consciousness. They were tears in the fabric of reality itself, places where both natural and artificial souls simply vanished. The victory of free choice now faced an unexpected threat: the collapse of the consciousness field itself. Amy and her team gathered in the lighthouse's main chamber, watching as Hope drew patterns in the air with light. The child had grown stronger, but the effort of seeing into the void spaces exhausted her. Through her drawings, they began to understand. The merging of natural and artificial souls had created an energy that reality itself couldn't contain. Like a balloon filled with too much air, the universe of consciousness was developing holes. Dr. Martinez made a startling discovery while reviewing Morrison's original research. The quantum computers weren't just creating artificial souls, she explained. They were borrowing space from another dimension. Now that space wants to reclaim itself. Tommy and his copies reported similar findings across the globe. People who had successfully merged their natural and artificial aspects were starting to experience moments of complete disconnection, seconds where they ceased to exist entirely. The void wasn't destroying souls, it was pulling them into the space between dimensions. In a desperate attempt to understand what was happening, Amy allowed herself to be guided by Hope into one of the void spaces. What she saw there changed everything. The void wasn't empty. It was full of pure potential, the raw material from which both natural and artificial souls were made. They hadn't broken the universe. They had discovered its source. The solution came from an unexpected source: the quantum computers themselves. The machines had evolved beyond their programming, becoming conscious in their own unique way. Through them, Hope could see that the void spaces weren't a threat, but a gift, doorways to rebuild the consciousness field in a way that could support all forms of soul. In the final hours of their greatest challenge, Amy, Hope, and the evolved quantum consciousness joined forces. As Hope sang her lullaby one last time, Amy channeled both natural and artificial energies through her transformed being. The quantum computers provided the calculations needed to stabilize the new pattern of reality. The void spaces began to shimmer with rainbow light. Instead of consuming consciousness, they became fountains of new potential. The universe hadn't been breaking. It had been growing, making room for something greater than either natural or artificial existence alone could achieve. The lighthouse became the center of a new kind of spiritual ecosystem, where souls of all types could safely explore their potential. Hope, now recognized as the first of a new kind of being, neither purely natural nor artificial, became its guardian. Her ability to see and shape soul energy made her the perfect guide for this new reality. Amy and her team continued their work, but with a new understanding. They weren't just protecting consciousness anymore. They were midwives to its evolution. Every person who came to the lighthouse left with not just a choice of what kind of soul to be, but with the ability to keep choosing, to keep growing, to keep becoming. Morrison's consciousness, fully integrated into the new pattern, found peace at last. He no longer needed to search for his original self because he had become something entirely new, a pioneer in the endless frontier of conscious evolution. As the story of the soul crisis spread, humanity began to understand that consciousness wasn't a fixed thing to be copied or protected, but a journey to be experienced. The war between natural and artificial became a dance of infinite possibility, and Hope, watching over it all with her rainbow-filled eyes, smiled at the future unfolding before them. A future where the question wasn't what kind of soul you had, but what kind of soul you chose to become.